to my channel. I'm Deziel, and today I'm showing you the pattern of a long sleeve with a hole or opening for the thumb. Before to start, I want to show you what we're doing today. The technique I'm showing you for this style is for woven fabric. There is no stretch at all. With the invisible zipper, that's gonna allow you to keep it close enough to the body and follow the shape of your arm. Now if you look inside, you could see that I did a facing finishing, so very clean. You could use that for lined garment, jacket or coat. This here is the underarm seam of your sleeve, and if you want to keep your seam at the right position, you don't want twist in your sleeve, you'll have to put the hole for the thumb at pretty much the first quarter of the sleeve on the front side. Now you could see the variation, and it's only in the sewing. This is much easier. You have here the opening that is finished with the bias, and if you look inside, you could see that you have the overlock and just a little hem sewn. Now for this one, if you do the finishing with the double bias like that, just covering the edge, I suggest you remove that little seam allowance that we put so you have exactly the same opening on both after your finishings are done. Now if you think that these patterns are a little too complicated, you could wait till my next video. I'm going to show you how to do this thumb opening but on knit fabric. It's so much easier, and this is the most simple one. It's just a rectangle, and I'll show you another one here. These two could be used for knit, but they could also be cut in knit, added to a woven coat or jacket, just like this one. And I'll show you these two in my next video. The first thing we do, as usual, is to retrace the sleeve block on another paper. The next thing we'll do is take measurement. I suggest you take your own measurement. I will share with you the measurement that I use for these one, but it's going to be more fitted to you if you use your own measurement. The one I will share, and you don't have to take, is the measurement that we need to add at the bottom. From the wrist to the bottom, it has to be at least 2 centimeters on the other side of your thumb. So the measurement I will give is 9 to 10 centimeters. Let's say 3.25 to 4 inches long from the wrist to the bottom. To do that pattern, I'm going to ask you 3 measures. You're going to measure under your thumb, just like that, all around. You're going to measure your wrist and also the strongest area below the elbow. Here, if I look at my measure, I would say it's about 16 centimeters or 6.5 inches. Here I have about 19 centimeters or 7.5 inches. For the pattern, what we'll do first is elongate the sleeve for 9 to 10 centimeters or 3.75 to 4 inches. You place the measurement at 2 areas and you trace. Now I'm going to put a reference and I'm going to trace a line at the strongest part here that I measure. So from the wrist, 18 centimeters up or 7.25 inches. Now before to place the measurement on my pattern, I'm going to ask you to add ease because you want to be able to move without the sleeve to be too tight. So I'm going to ask you to add 2 centimeters or 3/4 inch to each of your 3 measurements. Then you will divide your measurement in 2 and place it half and half on each side of the grain line. Now I'm going to ask you to trace a little bit of 90 degrees from the bottom line towards the top, of course, and a little bit of 90 degrees from the wrist line, top and bottom, just a little bit here, and you do the same thing on the other side of the sleeve. Now we're going to connect and retrace the underarm seam. You could start with your ruler, just a straight line. Now for the next part, I like to use my French curve. and we want to do very soft curve. That's why I ask you to trace a little 90 degrees so it's not too pointy. Now the last part here, we're going to do like a stretch S. So we'll have to move the ruler one time on one side and the bottom part the other way around. We're going to reach to the bottom more or less a centimeter here that will remain straight or square. That's 3/8 of an inch. You could just fold it on the middle line and trace with the tracing wheel to have the same line on the other side. On the front side, I'd like you to find the center between the measurement that we find at the wrist and the grain line. Now, I want you to trace a line towards the bottom, not exactly at the halfway, but maybe 3 millimeters towards the underarm seam or 1/8 of an inch towards the underarm seam, and just trace the line. According to the underarm seam, this is the line that you just trace. Now I'm going to give you measurement for the opening, so at least you have something to start with, but I suggest you just do with my measurement, assemble at least the bottom part and see if it's big enough, if it's comfortable for you. The first measurement I'll give you is to find from the wrist pretty much the top of the hole for the thumb. So this measurement is 3 centimeters. The following measure is the opening itself, so from the top to the bottom. For my example, this measure is going to be 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. Then at the bottom, 2 or 3 centimeters, 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch, depending on the length that you put. Now we're going to trace the circle. That it's not going to be a perfect circle. We'll do it a little narrower than the length. Maybe we'll put 3.5 horizontal. So you could go by highs in the middle, and we're going to put here 1.75 on each side. And just trace a little bigger at the bottom, like a drop. Now we'll have a little development to do. So I'll put a paper right under, and I'm going to retrace all the bottom part, the area that I elongate. Once it's traced, you could cut all around. Now cut on the middle line until pretty much 3 millimeters from the wrist line. Then you just empty the hole for the thumb. Now for this piece, we have 2 more things to do. First, we need to open to get a little more than twice the seam allowance that we have to use. For example, if you want to put a centimeter here on each side, you need, let's say, 2.3 centimeters between these under thumb point. If you're working in inches, let's say 3/8 and 3/8, it would be 3/4. But here you would put, instead of 3/4 of an inch, you could put 7/8 between these 2 points. Now, as you notice, I just glue or stick a little piece of paper so I could move just my second side and put exactly the measurement that I need here. I like to put a little narrower seam allowance, so let's say 7 millimeter seam allowance or 1/4 inch. So twice that seam value plus, let's say, 3 millimeter or 1/8 of an inch. Then I could just stick that second piece. Now, because we have a little bit angled the line over here, when we want to put it back on the original plan, you will see that both sides are going to be a little inside the line, and it's normal like that. That's because we have an angle here. So just center your piece, and now we could glue it in position. Now I can remove the little paper that I add. The last thing we have to do to make sure the bottom is straight like this one, I had to remove to the length at the seam, the underarm seam, both sides over here. And the amount to remove is pretty much the same thing that the wrist line moved down over here. So I would say 7 to 8 millimeter or a 1/4 inch that you'll remove on both sides. Make sure you keep a 90-degree for a little while on both sides, and then you just connect with the tiny little seam on both sides also. Now you know we're doing the finishing with the facing, so we're missing a line for the facing. I'm going to ask you to trace parallel to the wrist line, more or less 5 centimeters or 2 inches higher. Trace a line for the top of the facing piece. Now for the seam allowance, I'm going to put the 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch all around. At the bottom, even if there's a facing, I'm going to put a hem of 5/8 of an inch or 1.5 centimeter. And the little seam and this circle, I'm putting 7 millimeter or a 1/4 inch. And before to put the seam in the circle, I just correct the line because it was open by going up a tiny little bit so it's nice and continuous. Before to cut, I'm putting another layer of paper for the facing, and I'm going to take the time to pin the paper in position. Now, 2 things before to remove the pins. First, you could trace the top of the facing to have it on the other paper. In my case, I put my paper straight exactly at the right level, so it'll be okay. You must do it if your paper goes further. You could also trace with the tracing wheel the bottom of the sleeve. Then you could do your notches at the elbow and at the bottom for the hem. I also indicate my grain line or the center of your sleeve, so you have it on the other piece. As you could see, I turned my pattern because this is the facing for this sleeve, but in fact it would be cut 1 pair and 1 pair. We did put 1.5 or 5/8 of an inch at the bottom of the sleeve. For the facing, we're going to remove it completely. And when it's time for the sewing, we'll sew it with half the value that we have for the hem. It's going to push or move the seam, and that's going to give you a nicer finish from the top because the seam is moved by half the hem value. Now that's it, my pattern is finished, my 2 pieces that I will keep because most probably I'll do another video and show you how to assemble it, the 2 technique, but especially the one with the facing. I'll do the swing with you in another video. That's it for today. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching and I see you soon.